Yo, what is up everybody? I'm just making a video here to show off the deck profile for my 60 card Hero Extralink deck. To be honest, when I was making this deck, I just wanted to make something that was a little bit more original. I wasn't expecting it to be too consistent, but I was actually very surprised by how explosive this deck could be on the first turn. It is running quite a few garnets, which is why I chose to run 60 cards in my deck. And it's not meta by any means. It's very easily interruptible by hand traps, but it's still a very fun deck to play. I'd say it's just like a weaker Gouki deck. But without further ado, let's get into the deck profile here. I'm not going to go too in depth for every single card, just because a lot of them are pretty mainstream. A lot of people know how they work. But first on the deck list, we have Gemini Garnet here. So I'm running the Brilliant Fusion engine, so it's pretty mandatory to run at least some sort of Gemini in your deck. And since we don't need any special techs, Garnet will work fine. Next off, we have Gamma Seal. One of the reasons why I wanted to make a link spam deck is because I really like Gamma Seal. He's one of my favorite cards. And with Kyoto Waterfront, you want to send a lot of cards to the graveyard, so it kind of works running Gamma Seal in a deck that spams a lot of link monsters. The next off we have Vision Hero Vion. So this is actually one of the cards you want to draw into. He's not the best combo starter, but you can definitely extra link when drawing this card. So he's a very good combo starter. You normally want to send either Shadow Mist or Malicious to the graveyard to start off your combo with this card. Next off is Armageddon Night. So he's kind of similar to Vion. I prefer to see him in most situations, but he can do the same combo as Vion can. So he's another good card to have in your starting hand. One of the better cards to have is Summon Sorceress. Summon Sorceress, Summoner Mock. Summoner Mock can search Vion or Armageddon Night from your deck, and it's actually really explosive when you start with Summoner Mock, because you can use your Isolde and a warrior monster to make Summoner Monk. I'm confusing their names now. You can make Summon Sorceress, and you can have a lot of explosive combos by searching at Performage monsters from your deck, or even Fairy Tale Snow from your deck. So very good combo starter. Next off, we have the Predaplant engine itself. So we're going for 3 Lawn Fires to search out Predaplant. Pretty self-explanatory. I can use it to thin your deck as well. And then Predaplant, Orpheus Scorpio. Now when you start with Lawn Fire Blossom or Orpheus Scorpio in your starting hand, it's almost 100% in Extra Link unless you mess up. It's very consistent. But just the nature of these cards, they're very interruptible by hand traps. Next off, we have Cobra. So another one of the garnets in the deck. Typically with a Predaplant, Orpheus Scorpio, and Darlington Cobra, you make MX Saber Invoker to extend your plays after you get Brilliant Fusion. Next off, we have Speedroid Terratop and Speedroid Takum Tomberg. Now, this is a little bit interesting, but it makes a MX Saber Invoker without using your normal summon, which is very powerful. It essentially gets you an Isolde on board with no normal summon taken up. So I really like this combo. It's almost as good as getting Seraphonate on the field for your extra normal summon, except it's not necessarily as good because you don't send monsters to the graveyard like you do with Brilliant Fusion, but still very powerful. So next off we have 3 Malicious. Just really good for extending plays when you send it to the graveyard. Makes a free Isolde with not free, but makes Isolde very easily with Vion or Armageddon Night. So very strong, and also we use Malicious to make Dark Law as well with Mass Change. Next up we have Celestial. Celestial is mostly here to add with Isolde on summon. He's good next turn if you really need the draw power. When he's in your graveyard, he can really help banish your last Malicious and banish this guy, draw 2 cards. And it can help you if you're in a pinch to somehow get over your board. Very unlikely if you do extra link them, but it's still possible. Next off we have Elemental Hero Shadow Mist. We run him for 2 purposes. One is to either search. So if you summon Vion, you can send him to the graveyard, search Malicious to your hand, and then use Vion's effect to banish Shadow Mist and add Poly to your hand. and then you can make a Soul Day by summoning Destiny Hero Dangerous. So that's one of the combos you have with Shadow Mist. But the other reason you run Shadow Mist is to summon him off of Firewall, or to summon him with Summoner Monk, Surge Mass Change, and make Dark Wall. So another strong card. You can also summon him off of a Soul Day as well if you want to. Next we have a Performance Engine. So Damage Jungler is unbanned. Tried running it, it's awesome. You're able to search a Hat Tricker with him, which is awesome. Most of the time I actually send Juggler now that he's unbanned rather than Trick Clown, because it lets you choose when you want to summon your monster. Hat Tricker, you can summon him anytime, but Trick Clown summons as soon as he's sent to the graveyard. So there's a little bit more flexibility with Hat Tricker, but I still run both because they're good combo extenders regardless. I run 2 Hat Trickers because drawing into him is actually a pretty good thing for this deck because he can extend your combos. Next off we have Goblin Berk. I almost never start combos with him, but if you draw him, it's not necessarily bad. He's not a dead draw. But the reason why you run him is kind of a second Earth target for MX Saber Invoker, as well as not being a dead card in your hand. You don't want to see more than 1 in your hand, so we only run 1. Next we have Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades. He's just really good combo extender with the Brilliant Fusion Engine, and since we also run Zephyros, he can also summon off of Zephyros' effect. Pretty good synergy there as well with the Brilliant Fusion Engine, so we run both of them. Here we have Fairy Tale Snow. Good because you can summon her with Summon Sorceress by using Summoner Monk if you start your combo with Summoner Monk. You can also summon Malicious with Summon Sorceress as well if you have a Warrior in the field, which is pretty good if you can't send Malicious to the graveyard. But Snow is usually one of the targets we use if we have Summoner Monk. Next is Corruptor Ibli. Obviously, we're extending link plays by using Mermaid. Very seldomly will we use Ibli's normal summon effect, just because by the time we have a Mermaid, Firewall, and all that on the field, we typically have already used our Seraphinite extra normal summon, or we have already used our Goblin extra normal summon if we did not get Brilliant Fusion. So we don't get to use her second effect very often, which is a shame, but we do want the extra name for when you're link summoning. Next I ran 3 Kyoto Waterfront. One of the reasons why I wanted to build a deck like this is because of Kyoto Waterfront and Gamma Seal. To be honest with you, this deck probably might be better if you replace the Gamma Seal and the Kyoto Waterfront with Terraforming and Magical Midfield Breaker, so you don't get interrupted by hand traps like Effect Veiler and Ghost Ogre while doing your combo. But because I like Gamma Seal, I run these cards. However, if you want it to be more consistent, you can run Magical Midfield Breaker instead. And next we have 3 Called by the Grave. This we don't draw it very often because we're running 60 cards, but this is almost essential to be in your hand against any meta deck, just because of how many hand traps are run in the meta at the moment. We run 3 Brilliant Fusion. It's not bad to have it in your hand. It's good if you can search it, but if you have it in your hand and you don't have Predaplant or any way to summon Predaplant, then having this in your hand is a good way to extend combos later on. That being said, you can Extralink without drawing Brilliant Fusion, but it's a lot easier if you do. You don't have to be as particular with what you're doing. Next we run 2 Polymerization. Searchable via Vion, and even if you don't have a summon target with Poly, it's still good discard fodder for the Nightmare cards or for Summoner Monk. However, we do have a fusion target which is dangerous, and that can make us a Soul Day if we draw Vion first turn. Next, we run double Terraforming to search Kyoto Waterfront. You really want to see Kyoto Waterfront at your starting hand, or at least somewhere in your combo, either drawn by your Nightmare cards, at least sometime in your turn, because it can get Gamma Seal, which is really strong because you have the negates on board. Next, we have Mass Change. This is to make Dark Law. We also run Mass Change 2 just in case we don't have access to Malicious, so we use all of Malicious's summoning effects. That being said, it's actually very rare that we'll use all of Malicious summoning effects just because of how many combo extenders we do have in the deck. Next we run 1 Alert of Darkness. This used to be 3, but I found that when I drew Alert of Darkness, I actually more often used it as discard fodder than anything, because there's so many cards in your hand that you'd actually rather have in your hand that are dark there's not many cards that you want to banish. So now I'm only running it at 1 just because it's nice to have it there. And it's not necessary to have it though, and I might be switching out for another card, but I just haven't figured out which one yet. Next, I have Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is pretty standard, it's just a staple card. Soul Charge. This card is crazy. You can link away your whole board to get strong monsters on the field, and then just Soul Charge to bring up all your link monsters back onto the field. Next, we have Reinforcement Army, pretty standard. Search Vion or Armageddon Night. Foolish Burial. If you really have no way to send one of your combo extenders to the graveyard, you have Foolish Burial. So if you draw, it's a 1-of, but it can extend your combos. And now we have the equips for a Soul Day. We run 5 equips. Just in case you draw one, it's not dead. I'm actually considering adding Phantom Knights to the deck as well. So if you draw 2 equips by chance, it's still not. It's still possible to summon a warrior monster from your deck, and Phantom Knights also have a good way to search Shade Brigade in, which extends your combos as well. So let's move on to the extra deck real quick. This deck can Gumbler. It can actually Gumbler quite reliably. I'd say anytime you can Extralink, you can bring out Gumbler. So we run Gumbler. Discards 2, so that is a good thing for us. And it doesn't make you discard 2 because you will summon him last in your Extralink, and then you can make a Malicious. You can make Dark Law and summon Gamma Seal afterwards. Next we have Skull Dread. He's actually, I've almost never summoned him in this variant of the deck. He's here because I also run a Tzolk'in version of the deck, which summons Tzolk'in and summons Clearwing Synchro Dragon. Skull Dread is good there because it boosts their attack and helps you summon Gamma Seal because we don't use Firewall in that version. But he's still here just in case we need him. Next we have Firewall Dragon. This deck wouldn't work without Firewall. I'm making this video now because I'm predicting that he might get banned, and in that scenario this deck will be worthless, so I'm trying to share this deck profile before that happens. And next we have Griffin. This deck actually can do the Curious Griffin combo, so if you want to run Floodgates, you can do that. I don't run Curious in the main deck, but you can definitely run Curious in the main deck and run some Floodgates that you can actually search with this deck. So Griffin, you can set Imperial Order, Royal Decree, even Mask of Restricts. My friend runs Raw Sphere mode, so I want Mask of Restrict with Griffin so I can avoid him tributing my board away. Next we have Goblin. He's kind of like a more versatile Seraphonite. It doesn't give you the extra combo extenders, but gives you the extra normal summon, which is useful. Oftentimes I'll use his discard effect to discard Phoenix Blade just to get an extra draw, so it's kind of like an upstart Goblin for me. Nightmare Cerberus prevents your co-link monsters from being destroyed. When you're going first, that's typically the only effect you use, but it can destroy special summon monsters as well if going second, so it is quite a good versatile card. And Nightmare Phoenix, good against back row, prevents your co-link monsters from being destroyed by card effects. Very seldomly I'll have him on board once I've completed my Extralink, but he is main part of the combo. Next we have Nightmare Mermaid. Summons ably from the deck and draw 1, so that's pretty good. Underclock Taker is the monster we use to complete the Extralink, typically. And Isolde is what makes this deck possible. And Summon Sork is what makes 1-card combos of Armageddon Night or Vion possible to Extralink as well. And then Saber Invoker, this is how you make a Isolde with the Predaplants. Otherwise the Predaplants are kind of useless on board. But because you can make MX Saber Invoker and summon a warrior monster from your deck, it allows you to extend your combos a lot, and making Isolde is a great thing in this deck. Next is Seraphonite, extra normal summon, sends combo extenders to the graveyard. It's a great card. Dark Law basically tells any deck that relies on sending cards to the graveyard that they can't really play. And Destiny Hero Dangerous, this is to make a 1-card Isolde with Vion. Very oftentimes you can also Extralink with just Vion because you have this card if you can't get 2 warrior monsters on the field, and it allows you to get the most used out of Malicious as possible by summoning Dangerous. So now I'm just going to shuffle my deck and then we'll try out some combos. Alright, so right now we're just going to shuffle the deck. I'm going to be pretty thorough, and we're going to test out a random hand and see how where we go from there. Almost every time I use this deck, it pretty much ends in a Extralink, but like I said, it's very easy to interrupt. So even though it's consistent, it's not meta by any means. If you run this deck, though, you can definitely surprise people by how explosive the deck can be. So I'm just going to shuffle this a few times. We're also going to lay the cards out on the mat here, so we can be very thorough with our shuffle. It's a really fun deck to play. It's not linear, so you're kind of have to thinking, how can I get to the point where you have Firewall and a Nightmare monster on board so you can begin your Extralink combo. It's not always the same depending on the cards that you have in your hand. I guess that's why I like it, because it gives you room for creativity with what you're doing. And I also like it because it's a deck that not many people run, at least not decks that are similar. Okay, so we're done sorting out the deck here. I'm just going to put these together, and then I'll just give it one more shuffle, and then we'll do a test hand. I'm trying to be thorough so that it's really a random hand, not like a bunch of cards clustered together, or a bunch of the same cards clustered together. Okay, so we'll just do a cut somewhere in the middle here. Okay, and then here we go. So we have a Hat Tricker, Lone Fire Blossom. So if we don't draw a Cobra, this is pretty much an Extralink already. Center Monk. So we actually have 2 combo starters, which is pretty good. Yugioh Waterfront and Armageddon Night. So all these cards are pretty much cards you want to see in your hands, but because we drew Lone Fire Blossom, we're going to use him instead of any of our other combo starters, because the Predaplant engine is so strong in this deck. So first off, we're going to activate Yugioh Waterfront. The reason why you want to activate this first is because naturally when cards get sent to the graveyard, you get the counters that lets you search Gamma Seal. So we're going to start with Lone Fire, tribute him, and then we'll summon 2 more Lone Fires, because after you use Predaplant, you don't want to see Lone Fire in your hand anymore. So we're going to thin our deck by getting rid of all the Lone Fires. So here we have another Lone Fire, tribute to summon another Lone Fire, and then tribute to summon Cobra from your deck. And Cobra, you discard 1, so we're going to discard Armageddon Night to the graveyard. And then we can summon Cobra from our deck. We just have to find it first. But you can see where this deck weakness is. If that got hand trapped, like Effect Failure, Ash Blossom, or anything, then our combo would pretty much stop there. That's the reason why this deck, I wouldn't consider it a tier 3 or tier 2 deck, but maybe a rogue deck at best. Then using Cobra's effect, we're going to add Brilliant Fusion to the hand. Sorry, there's a bit of glare here. It's hard to see the cards in this light. So now we're going to overlay into MX Saber Invoker. So I'm just going to move everything down here a little bit. Okay. And then we'll use Invoker's effect to summon Heroic Challenger from our deck. And I'm not going to be shuffling until I draw, just because we're going to be searching a lot in this deck. So we have Heroic Challenger here. Okay, and then we're going to link off Heroic Challenger and MX Saber Invoker to summon Isolde. Or it's hard to see, but this is Isolde here. And then we'll use Isolde's effect to add Celestial to our hand. Okay. And now, after we add Celestial, we're going to use Isolde's second effect to send 4 equips to the graveyard. And one of them is going to be Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. The other ones, it's up to you. I like to send different Dimension Rearcanation to the graveyard because you can use it to set with Griffin, so you can use it next turn. And with this, I'm going to summon Armageddon Night. We're going to use Armageddon Night's effect to send Blackwing Zephyrs to the graveyard. So right now we have Armageddon Night and Isolde on the field. Okay. So this is the point where we're going to activate. Sorry, actually, no, we're not going to activate Brilliant Fusion yet. We're going to link summon it into. No, yeah, we are going to activate Brilliant Fusion. So here we activate Brilliant Fusion. We're going to send Garnet and Performance Damage Juggler to the graveyard. So. And this will get us Seraphonite on the field. We're going to banish Garnet, and we're going to, banish Garnet. We're going to banish Damage Juggler, and we're going to use his effect to add the next Hat Tricker to our hand. Okay, and from here, we're going to link summon into Summon Sork. And we're going to do this into the other zone here. And one of the things you can do here is summon Hat Tricker, and then you can use Zephyr's effect to send Hat Tricker back to your hand. And you can summon Hat Tricker because we control 2 monsters, right? And we're going to summon Zephyrus here. Now, one of the things you can do if you have Steam the Cloak in your deck is you can actually summon him here and use Summon Sorceress to summon Steam the Cloak, and that is another combo extender you can do with this deck. But for what we're doing right now, we're going to summon Zephyrus here, and Heroic Challenger 1000 Blades effect will activate in the graveyard because we take 400 damage for summoning Zephyrus, and now we can summon him to the zone Summon Sorceress points to, and this is important because we're going to use Summon Sorceress effect to summon Malicious from the deck. Okay. Now from here, we're going to make a Link to monster. My preference here is to use Phoenix. And Phoenix is going to point this direction because I want Firewall to end up here. And then we can use Summon Sorceress and Heroic Challenger to make Firewall. So we have our Firewall Dragon here and our Phoenix here. Sorry, everything's hard to see in this lighting. Alright, so from here, I'm going to banish MX Saber Invoker, and I'm going to banish an Armageddon Night, and the reason why we're doing this is to add Phoenix Blade to our hand. Okay. Now I'm going to use Kyoto Water Quantz effect to add Gamma Seal to our hand. And then we're going to normal summon Summoner Monk using Seraphonite's extra normal summon. Summoner Monk changes the defense position. We're going to discard Phoenix Blade to the graveyard and use Summoner Monk to summon Shadow Mist from your deck. And Shadow Mist effect will add Mass Change to your hand. And because we haven't used any Malicious as effect, I'm confident that we will have a Malicious that we can use for Mass Change. So we're going to add Mass Change instead of Mass Change 2 to our hand. Okay. And now from here, we're going to link off Phoenix to summon Mermaid from our extra deck. And then we're going to discard one for Mermaid, and I usually pick Celestial. And then we'll use that to get an Ibli from the deck. Okay. And now, from here, we can make a, let's see. From here we can make a Cerberus. Okay, and then I'm going to summon Hat Tricker, and then we can make a, actually, no. We're not going to summon the Hat Tricker. We're going to link summon these two. Into Goblin. We're not going to discard one for the extra draw because we have all the cards we need. But if you're searching for a card, then you can discard, or you can add Phoenix Blade and get the draw one from Goblin. But we're not going to use this effect because we can't get the extra normal summon. From here, we're going to use Firewall Dragon's effect. We're co-linked to 3 different monsters, so we can add 3 monsters. And what we're going to do is we're going to add Summoner Monk back to our hand. We're going to add Phoenix back to the extra deck. And then you can add any card you want from here. Let's see. Yeah, at this point it doesn't really matter, so what we're going to do is we're just going to add Zephyrus back to our hand. We want to keep our warriors in the graveyard just in case we need to banish anything. Okay. So from here we have a few options, but first I'm just going to banish 2 warrior monsters. I'm going to do Shadow Mist and Isolde. And this is to add Phoenix Blade back to our hand. Okay, so right now we have Firewall, Goblin, and Cerberus on the field, as well as Mermaid. we're going to link off Cerberus and Goblin to summon Griffin. And if you wanted the draw from Griffin, you could discard one, or if you want to set a card, we don't have any floodgates in our graveyard, and let's see, there's nothing I want to set at the moment, so we're not going to use Griffin's setting effect, but he's still good to have because he prevents monsters that are not pointed to from activating their effects if they were special summoned. And then we're going to use Firewall Dragon's effect to summon Summoner Monk. And then we're going to discard, using Summoner Monk's effect, we're going to discard Phoenix Blade to the graveyard and use Summoner Monk to get Fairy Tale Snow. Just in case we need to extend our combos, Fairy Tale Snow is good to have in the graveyard. So, alright, so from here we're going to link these two away into the Phoenix that we returned to the extra deck. And then Firewall Dragon's effect will summon the Zephyros that we added to our hand. And then we'll summon a Hat Tricker and make Underclock Taker. So now we've already completed the Extralink here. Just so it's easier to see, we have a Underclock Taker, a Phoenix, a Griffin, a Firewall, and a Mermaid. From here, what we can do is we can summon Hat Tricker, and then we can use Malicious's effect in the graveyard. We haven't used Malicious a single time, and this is another reason why I'm not drawing it, so we don't draw into any of our other Maliciouses. But we're going to use Malicious to summon another Malicious from our deck. And we'll link these three away into Gumblar. And then we can use Gumblar to make our opponent discard 2 cards because we are extra linked here. So, but we're not going to use Firewall Special Summon effect, because if we use Firewall Special Summon effect, it will trigger Gumblar's effect and we'll have to discard at least 1 card. So we're not using Firewall Dragon's effect here. Afterwards, you'll summon Malicious once again. And we'll summon him in the zone next to the Firewall. And now we activate Mass Change, send Malicious to the graveyard, summon a Dark Claw, and then Firewall Dragon's effect will trigger and we'll summon Gamma Seal. So now, with this board, we have 2 negates with Gamma Seal. They only have 4 cards in their hand because of Gumblar. Griffin will prevent their special summon monsters from activating their effects. Mermaid makes all their monsters lose 1,000 attack, and all their cards will be banished. If they search for a card, they will have to banish 1 card from their hand. So this is the full combo here, and you can see that was with a random hand. This deck isn't as consistent as Gouki, but it's definitely a lot more consistent than you would expect. So that concludes the deck profile. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.